Starting Genesis chapter 44, verse 14. Today will be the day we finish Genesis. And the reason I didn't take off for the VBS week is because I would really like to get through the entire Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, before Christmas. So that means after Christmas, we can go to like a gospel, like the book of John. I think the book of John might be next after this year is up. That's the long-term plan anyway. Of course, we got to get there first, which means we got to keep going. All right. To wrap up the book of Genesis, we're talking about the story of Joseph. Now tell me, I'm Mr. Clueless, tell me the story of Joseph. What happens in Joseph's story? Who is Joseph? Son of Jacob, okay. And Rachel.
Advisor of Pharaoh.
Okay, he gets to be the advisor to Pharaoh, second to Pharaoh. How does he get there? What happens first?
Tells him the dream that he had.
Okay, Joseph has dreams. He has dreams that he's going to rule over his brothers. And how do his brothers think about him after that?
Well, they put him in the well.
Yeah, they hate him and they throw him into a pit. And one of the brothers has a smart idea. Let's not kill him. Let's sell him. Do you remember who that brother is? It's Judah. And that name is very important because Judah is going to pop up again in our story today. So Judah says, let's sell poor little Joseph, our brother, our flesh and blood. And he gets sold as a slave to where? To Egypt. And long story short, during his time in Egypt, he's blessed by God so much that he ends up being second to Pharaoh because he interprets one of Pharaoh's dreams. What was the big dream? What was the interpretation anyway?
Famine.
How many years? 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. So Joseph, filled with the Spirit, comes up with a great idea. Here's what we should do, Pharaoh. What?
Store as much as you can.
Store the grain in the silos. Store up for the 7 years of famine. Sure enough, plan works. There's 7 years of plenty. They store up grain. And sure enough, the 7 years of famine come. And everyone's hungry. And Joseph says, let's open the doors. Whoever wants to come and buy grain, it'll be there for them. What happens to Joseph's brothers at that point? They get very hungry. They feel the effects of the famine too. And so Jacob says, go to Egypt and get food. When they go, Joseph recognizes his brothers and he pretends he feels like they're spies and tests them and says, I'm going to keep Simeon, your brother here, for you to prove that you're not spies. You're going to come back and bring Benjamin. And so the brothers go back and they ask Papa, hey, can we bring Benjamin back so we can get Simeon back too? And what is Jacob's initial response? No. Why?
Not my youngest.
My youngest?
He lost Joseph.
He already lost Joseph. And Benjamin was whose son? Rachel's, the beloved son. But what makes Jacob change his mind?
They were going to die.
Die of what?
Starvation.
Starvation, right? The food shortage is so bad that Jacob realizes if I don't send my boys to go get food in Egypt and send Benjamin, then Benjamin's going to die of starvation anyway. So what will be, will be. I think the verse is, if I'm depraved to my son, I am depraved. It's already done already. And Judah tells his father, if I fail to bring your youngest son back alive, may the guilt and blame be on me. So they go back to Egypt, and Joseph sees them, and Joseph welcomes them into his home and gives them tons of food. And he kind of dotes over Benjamin a little bit, but he wants to do one more test for his brothers. He takes, with the 12 sacks of grain he has to bring home, and one of them he puts his own silver cup. Whose sack does he put the silver cup in? Benjamin's. And then as they're going home, Joseph makes up a lie. He says, you know what? I hear that Pharaoh's silver cup The one that he does divination out of. It's a sacred cup, has been stolen. I bet one of those men stole it. So they chase after the brothers. And he accuses them, saying, one of you has stolen my Lord's silver cup. And the brothers say what? They deny it. And what do they say if it is there? They say, kill the one who has the cup and make the rest of us slaves. That's how sure none of us stole from you, advisor to Pharaoh. And so we left off last week. Joseph, he goes from sack to sack, from the oldest to the youngest. And when he opens up Benjamin's sack, there it is, the silver cup. And his brothers tear their clothes. Why?
Shame.
Shame, but what do they not want to happen to the little brother? Killed. Because what did Judah just promise Dad back home? Blame be on me. Reuben said, kill my 2 sons if I fail to bring your boy back to you. That's where we left off last week. Questions on our recap. All right. Joseph is setting up the test like this. What happened when he was originally betrayed by his brothers? He was sold. He was given away, and his brothers went away home. No problem at all. But notice something here. Let's go back real quick to verse 10 of chapter 44. The brothers say, whichever one is found shall die, the rest shall be the Lord's servants. But Joseph said, let it be as you say, he who is found with it shall be my servant, and the rest of you shall be innocent. In other words, the one I find the silver cup in, he's the only one that's guilty. The rest of you can go home. Just like what happened originally with Joseph. Joseph was the one left behind, and the brothers went home with a bounty, with silver coins. The brothers, you guys can go home to Dad with your families, with all the food and wealth I am giving you. You have an opportunity here. Okay. But when it is found in Benjamin's sack, what do the brothers do? They tear their clothes and they immediately go back where? They don't go home, they go back to Pharaoh's house, back to the city. All right, let's keep reading. Verse 14. When Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, he was still there. They fell before him to the ground. Joseph said to them, what deed is this that you have done? Do you not know that a man like me can indeed practice divination? What does that mean? It's a good question.
Decide.
Okay, he can decide, but divination, what's divination? Talking to spirits, talking to gods, talking to the heavenly beings to find out the answer about something. In other words, what Joseph is saying here, and maybe this is a little bit of a bluff, not really a bluff, but he's just kind of making a hyperbole here. He's saying, why would you steal from me? Don't you know that I can talk to the gods and know if you have stolen and whose cup would be in the sack? Trying to scare them a little bit. God's on my side. What's ironic about this? How does Joseph actually know that the cup was stolen?
Because he was part of it.
Because he put the cup there, right? He didn't need to have any divination to talk to gods. He put that there. He's only saying this to kind of scare them a little bit, to continue the test. It's also doubly ironic because does Joseph actually have the ability to receive knowledge from God?
He's received dreams.
Yes, he does. He actually does have the ability to receive the secrets from God as God has given them to him. Does that make sense? So Billy, what's happening here is he's trying to scare them, saying, don't you know I can know all things because God can tell me that? Well, how dare you steal from me? You thought you could get away with it. Verse 16. And Judah said, What shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak? Or how can we clear ourselves? God has found out the guilt of your servants. Behold, we are my Lord's servants, both we and he also in whose hand the cup has been found. What is Judah saying? All of us share the guilt. All of us should be punished. But here again, this is what Joseph says. But he said, far be it from me that I should do so. Only the man in whose hand the cup was found shall be my servant. But as for you, go up in peace to your father. So what is Joseph doing here?
He's baiting it to see if they'll stick together.
All right. Are you going to do the same thing you did to me? Are you going to run away from your brother and leave him alone? Have you learned anything, brothers? All of you are free to go home, just like you were free to go home when you cast me in that pit. Will you do the same to Benjamin? That's the test that Joseph is presenting here. And it's cool because he repeats it twice. No, you all are innocent. I insist you all are innocent. No. You guys get to go home. Go home. Just go home. Questions on that? Okay. The next section we have is Judah's answer. This is the longest monologue in the entire book of Genesis. And we know Judah. What are some of the things Judah has done in the past?
That prostitute Tamar, who was pretending to be a prostitute.
Yes, okay. So he slept with his daughter-in-law because he wouldn't give her children by his own son. He was and also, by the way, he, in his hypocrisy, after thinking he was slept with a prostitute, threatened to burn her for her crime. Complete hypocrisy. And then again, we hear that he's the one who actually made Joseph be in the very place he was. He's the one who betrayed Joseph. Has Judah learned anything? I think it's very fitting, Judah being the one through all this happened. He's the one who speaks up and talks. And what does he say? Verse 18. Then Judah went up to him and said, "O my Lord, please let your servant speak a word in my Lord's ear. And let not your anger burn against your servant, for you are like Pharaoh himself." My Lord asked his servants, saying, "Have you a father or a brother?" And we said to my Lord, "We have a father, an old man, and a young brother, the child of his old age. His brother is dead." Who's his brother? Joseph, as he's talking to him. "And he alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, 'Bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes on him.' We said to my Lord, 'The boy cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die.' Then you said to your servants, 'Unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall not see my face again.' When we went back to your servant, my father, we told him the words of my Lord. And when our father said, 'Go again, buy us a little food,' we said, 'We cannot go down. If our youngest brother goes with us, then we will go down. We cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us.' Then your servant, my father, said to us, 'You know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One left me, and I said, surely he has been torn to pieces, and I have never seen him since. If you take this one also from me, and harm happens to him, you will bring down my gray hairs in evil to Sheol. Now therefore, as soon as I come to your servant my father, and the boy is not with us, then as his life is bound up in the boy's life, as soon as he sees the boy is not with us, he will die. And your servants will bring down the gray hairs of your servant our father with sorrow to Sheol. For your servant became a pledge of safety for the boy to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, then I shall bear the blame before my father all my life." Now here's what Judah proposes. "Now therefore, please let your servant remain instead of the boy as a servant to my Lord, and let the boy go back with his brothers. For how can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I fear to see the evil that would find my father." What's different about this Judah?
He made a 180.
He made a 180. How so, Gil?
Now he's worried. He's worried about his brother. He's willing to give himself up for his brother rather than be jealous. And
He's willing to throw himself in the pit. Does that sound like anyone we know? Someone willing to die in our stead? This is maybe a little bit of a Christ figure here. And of course we know that from whose line would Jesus be born? From Judah's line. So wow, this is kind of a powerful Christ connection here. So Judah, fearing the grief and even death that may find his father, says, take me in the boy's stead. As you said, Gil, a complete 180 that Joseph sees firsthand right in front of him. And how does Joseph react? Chapter 45. Then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him. He cried, make everyone go out from me. So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept aloud so that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? Now something interesting about this right here. We mentioned last week, when Joseph talks to the brothers, how is he speaking to them?
Like he doesn't know them.
He's not, not like, sure, like he doesn't know them, but he's not speaking Hebrew to them. He's speaking Egyptian. He's using an interpreter, right? And when Joseph cries out, send everyone out from me, that also includes the interpreter. So these might be the first words that Joseph's brothers hear Joseph speak in their native tongue. I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. What does that mean? They were completely flabbergasted, shocked. They could not believe their ears.
now they've spoken about their father. And
Yes.
Benjamin.
Yes.
Still he asked, is my father alive?
Okay. So, I don't know if he asked on the return. He asked the first journey. I don't know if he asked at the second journey.
Judah did indicate that
Let's see.
in 34, his father would die. 34.
I'm trying to think. I know he asked at the beginning of the first arrival of the brothers. I don't know if it was the second arrival, because some time has passed between.
Benjamin,
Chapter of verse 34?
How can I go back to my father? His father is alive.
Okay, I mean, sure. I mean, that is an indication that probably, Joseph should have gotten the hint. That's good. But what does it say, despite of that, despite of my already knowing this, that his first question is, my father still alive? What does it show about Joseph? Love and care for his father. He wants utmost confirmation right away because he cares about his father so much. Also, we talked about this last week too. What was the dream that Joseph had?
the brothers would bow down to him.
Not just the brothers. Father too. Right? That the whole family would be together in front of him. Joseph is asking, could this dream still come true? And the answer, obviously, Jacob still is alive in his old age. Questions on that? Okay. Let's keep going. So Joseph said to his brothers, come near to me, please. And they came near. And he said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. Here's the key. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land for these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will neither be plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. That's a major, major theme through the Old Testament. that through all this evil, human brokenness, does God still have control? Is it because of Judah's sin that the Christ figure can no longer come into the world? Because we have one less perfect person? No, God loves to do His work through imperfect people. Is it because of King David's sin with Bathsheba that Jesus could no longer come because the promise to David could not come true? No, God works through evil to keep His promises. Does He want evil to happen? No, of course not. He'd probably rather do things the pure and holy way. But even when we fail Him, can He still keep His promises? His promises do not hinge on our own obedience. How about that? Very Lutheran concept when it comes to being saved by grace alone. If God's promise, hey, you're going to be in heaven with me as long as you do everything I say, none of us would be in heaven. This also reflects this idea that there are still sniffs and smells of the new covenant, the new promise, even in the Old Testament, right? That when God does His work, it is a free gift. Make sense? Cool. All right, let's keep going. He has made me a father to Pharaoh, is verse 8, and Lord of all his house and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not tarry. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me. You and your children and your children's children, and your flocks, your herds, and all you have. There I will provide for you, for there are yet 5 years of famine to come, so that you and your household and all that you have do not come to poverty. And now your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see, that it is my mouth that speaks to you. You must tell my father of all my honor in Egypt and all that you have seen. Hurry and bring my father down here. Then he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept. And Benjamin wept upon his neck. And he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. After that, his brothers talked with him. A nice little slow down there for a second. No reason to have that detail in there, and yet we have it. Right? Just nice slowing down of the text to show that they probably spent a lot of time catching up with each other, trying to fight this disbelief maybe in his brother's eyes. Verse 16. When the report was heard in Pharaoh's house, Joseph's brothers have come. It pleased Pharaoh and his servants. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this. Load your beasts and go back to the land of Canaan. And take your father and your households and come to me. And I will give you the best of the land of Egypt. And you shall eat the fat of the land. And you, Joseph, are commanded to say, do this. Take wagons from the land of Egypt for your little ones and your wives. And bring your father and come. Have no concern for your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. This is a critical part here in the overarching narrative. Pharaoh hears Joseph's crying. And the brothers are here. What does Pharaoh say to Joseph?
It's okay, bring your family and I'll give
It's okay, bring your family, not just for a little time, not to visit, to build a house, right? To have some real estate, the best of the land, to live there. Billy.
Okay, now maybe I'm way off on this, but okay. Now, when Joseph and the brothers came, right, they brought all their family and everything else. Did this start when the Egyptians and things of the Egyptians become slaves?
That was after the Pharaoh died.
Okay, afterwards. Okay, so this is before. This is how did
the beginning of, because of bringing these people into Egypt.
Yes. So this is a good point, Billy. God made a promise to Abraham. Lots of people, right, would come from descendants. God also made another promise. He said to Abraham, hey, by the way, your people are going to be in a foreign land for 400 years. How did that promise come true? Well, this is how it started. Okay? So what does Pharaoh say? Don't come and visit. Come and live here. What's a little bit of a problem with that? Where do Jacob and his family live now? In Canaan, which is the promised land. So Pharaoh, by the way, notice here, Pharaoh doesn't ask Joseph, do you want to bring him? What does Pharaoh say? And you, Joseph, are commanded to say, do this, take wagons and bring them here. Pharaoh commands Joseph, I want your family here. Joseph can't say no to this. And so, that's what Joseph does, because he's not first in command in Egypt. He's only second in command under Pharaoh. By the way, Pharaoh's kind of a nice guy here. We mentioned that. The best of the land he's given. Why is Pharaoh so nice to Joseph?
Because he's appreciative of Joseph's abilities and his running of his country for him.
Okay, running of his country for him. What did Joseph do for his country?
Well fed.
Saved his
Not even just kept them well fed, saved them all from perishing in starvation. He's indebted to Joseph. And so Pharaoh probably is doing this not as an act of compulsion, but an act of abundant love. Bring them here and give them the best of the land. I want Joseph's family here.
I want to keep the golden boy happy.
Keep the boy. I like that. Keep the golden boy happy. Absolutely. There's still 5 more years of drought to go, right? Okay, questions on that? It's kind of insidious how small a detail this is that he was commanded to do this, but how big it comes in the grand scheme of how did the Israelites end up living in Egypt for 400 years. Well, this is how it started. Let's keep going. Verse 21. The sons of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them wagons according to the command of Pharaoh, and gave them provisions for the journey. To each and all of them he gave a change of clothes, but to Benjamin he gave 300 shekels of silver and 5 changes of clothes. To his father he sent as follows: 10 donkeys loaded with good things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded on grain, bread, and provision for his father on the journey. Then he sent his brothers away, and as they departed he said to them, do not quarrel on the way. This is a very interesting verse. Joseph sends them out and says, don't quarrel on the way while you're going home. Why do you think he says that? Okay, we'll get to that in a second, right? But certainly maybe a little bit of, you're not a stepbrother, you are a true brother to me. He may love Benjamin a lot too. Why does Joseph say, don't quarrel on the way? It seems like a very abrupt thing to ask.
Well, maybe the blame for what they first did to Joseph, and who's saying you did this.
Okay, all right. Who gets the blame for what happened to Joseph? They may try to beat each other up, right? Honestly,
The father was old, and he didn't know whether he was going to live that.
yes. Okay, right? Go home swiftly. Don't stop at all. But Billy, if I were to say to you, and you're older than me, hey, don't fight, Billy. Don't you fight. It's kind of patronizing, right? Joseph's the little brother here, and yet he's giving commands? Yes, he is. Because who is Joseph now? Second command in Egypt. And was there maybe a dream that foretold this? That the brothers would be bowing down to the little brother. And we see this now. Joseph has the authority to give commands to his brothers. Don't fight in the way, brothers, my older brothers. You will not do this. He's giving the commands, and the brothers, they listen to him. How crazy is that? Again, it's another small detail. It doesn't really seem like much, but we see a fulfillment of the promise that God gave to Joseph in his dreams here. Verse 25. So they went up out of Egypt and came to the land of Canaan to their father Jacob. And they told him, Joseph is still alive, and he is ruler over all the land of Egypt. And his heart became numb, for he did not believe them. But when they told him all the words of Joseph, which he had said to them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of their father Jacob revived, and Israel said, it is enough. Joseph, my son, is still alive. I will go to see him before I die. All right, so Jacob at first does not believe that his son, who he thought was dead, 20 years ago, is still alive, and not only still alive, but second in command in Egypt. Kind of would be unbelievable, but what convinces him?
His sons and the gifts that he got.
Okay, the sons and the gifts that he got. By the way, Gil, who gets the most gift? Benjamin does. So maybe that just might be another convincing for Jacob that why did Benjamin get the most out of all the brothers? Maybe because a true blood relative gave that to him, a full-blooded relative, Joseph did. Make sense? All right.
Now, was he, what he called, was the younger guy, was he?
Benjamin.
Was he there with the brothers, or was he born afterwards?
Yep, he went back with the brothers.
No, in the original, when he sold them to the Egyptians, was he born as of yet or no?
He was, if he was not born yet, he was if he was born, he was very little. Again, Rachel died right about the time, very close to when Joseph was betrayed. Rachel died in childbirth, bearing Benjamin. So Benjamin's still kind of young at this point. He's probably about, I got to do the math, he's probably about Joseph's age when Joseph was betrayed. So teenage, maybe early 20s, somewhere around there. I got to do the math. I haven't done the math in my head. All right. Questions on that? Let me get this back up. This one. See, I'm no longer using my notes, guys. That's why it's going to sleep mode all the time. Okay. Chapter 46. This is where we're going to start skipping around a little bit because there's a lot of information here that maybe it's not imperative to the narrative, but I will sum it up as we go through it. We are going to read the first few verses, though, of chapter 46. So Israel took his family with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. And God spoke to Israel in visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, I am the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you into a great nation. I myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also bring you up again, and Joseph's hand shall close your eyes. This is really important because God's promise to Abraham, Bill, was that he would make great nation.
But he would also, if they go to Egypt,
they'll come out again, right? Absolutely.
later on.
Jacob and his family are 70 people. Would you call that a great nation? Not at all. So when does God keep his promise? Well, God tells Jacob right here, you're going to go to Egypt. Egypt is like the cocoon in which you will grow to become a butterfly, right? You are going to grow into a great nation in Egypt, and then I will take you out. Don't be afraid that you're leaving the promised land. Don't be afraid that you're almost being forced to come into Egypt. It's all part of my plan. God's plan. Make sense? All right. The rest of the chapter, Jacob goes into Pharaoh's land, and we get a genealogy of Jacob's descendants. We get the whole family, and at the end, we hear that there are 70 in total. Verse 27, there are 70 people of the house of Jacob. Again, not a great nation. We're going to go ahead to verse 28 of chapter 46. He had sent Judah ahead of him to Joseph to show the way before him in Goshen. And they came into the land of Goshen. Now, by the way, Goshen is close to Egypt, but it's not in, it's in the land of Egypt, but it's not like right in the cities. It's kind of like corner of Egypt. It's still some distance from the main hub. That's an important detail we'll highlight in a second. Then Joseph prepared his chariot and went up to meet Israel, his father, in Goshen. He presented himself to him and fell on his neck and wept on his neck a good while. Again, another detail we didn't really need, a good while. But what does that detail add? Right? That this is like a very emotional reunion. 20 years of thinking your son is dead, and here comes your son, probably running full speed into your arms, and you weep on each other. For a good while, it says. This was an emotional reunion. Israel said to Joseph, "Now let me die, since I have seen your face and know that you are still alive." Why does he say that? He's overjoyed. Finally, though the worries and fear and anxiety in my life are finally gone, I can die happy, is what he's saying. Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, "I will go up and tell Pharaoh, and will say to him, my brothers and my father's household, who were in the land of Canaan, have come to me. And the men are shepherds, for they have been keepers of livestock. And they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. When Pharaoh calls you and says, 'What is your occupation?' you shall say, 'Your servants have been keepers of livestock from our youth even until now, both we and our fathers, in order that you may dwell in the land of Goshen. For every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians.'" What's going on here?
Why are they
It's also
abomination to the
they
Egyptians?
mix with the Egyptians, and they'll have their own land to work.
Uh-huh.
The Egyptians will not mix with them because they don't really associate with shepherds.
Yes. That's a good question, Bill.
A little discrimination there.
Why are shepherds an abomination to the Egyptians? That's the kind of the key to understanding what Joseph is actually doing here. Joseph is almost coaching his brothers. Hey, when you talk to Pharaoh, the big guy, here's exactly what you tell them. Don't say you're shepherds. Because what do shepherds do? They raise sheep, and they eat the sheep. And the Israelites, what else would they do with sheep or lambs? They would sacrifice sheep. Now in Egypt, one of their gods, sheep and lambs were sacred. So they didn't sacrifice sheep or lambs. That would have been blasphemy. That would have been detestable. So this idea of shepherds raising sheep to eat them would have been an abomination to them. No, sheep are sacred animals. We don't touch them. So, what is Joseph saying? Hey, just don't go to Pharaoh and say, "Hey, we sacrificed sheep to our own God." Just say, you keep animals, which could be all livestock. It could be cows, it could be horses, it could be mules. Just paint this picture with a large scope, because we don't want to offend the Egyptians. Because here's something interesting. We see a little bit of the tension already. It may sound like the Egyptians and Israelites are buddy-buddy now. Pharaoh loves Joseph, but are they really buddy-buddy? Are they happy to commingle forever? They have two very different beliefs, two very different religions. One is a pagan group, and one is the true people of God. They still don't mix together. Joseph knows this. Joseph, by the way, wants his family to live in Goshen, which is far away from the center of Egypt. Why?
Not to mix.
Not to mix, for two reasons. One, he wants to protect his brothers from the Egyptians, who might see them sacrificing sheep to the one true God, and the Egyptians might say, "That is an abomination. Get these Israelites out of here." And also, maybe he wants to protect the Israelites from themselves, because if the Israelites live in Egypt, right in the center, they might start to marry the Egyptians and compromise their faith a little bit. We've seen that happen before. So Joseph says, let's spread out. We'll kind of live in a corner of Egypt, but not become part of the Egyptians.
You don't want to mix with the Egyptians, but Joseph has two sons later on, right?
Yes.
He
Yes.
already had them.
He already had them at this point. He's already had them at this point. But still, he wants to protect his people from the Egyptians, especially when it comes to this idea that, oh, you sacrifice sheep. These are sacred creatures. We got to get these Israelites out of here. We will see this come up again in Exodus, when Moses is asking Pharaoh, can we leave and go sacrifice out of Egypt, because we know that our sacrifices are detestable to the Egyptians. Why are they detestable? Because the Israelites sacrifice Sheep. And sheep are what, the Egyptians? Sacred. Does that make sense? Good. So that is what Joseph is saying. He is coaching them and saying, hey, don't say you're shepherds. Just say you are a keeper of livestock. Chapter 47. So Joseph went in and told Pharaoh, my father and my brothers with their flocks and herds and all that they possess have come from the land of Canaan. They are now in the land of Goshen. And from among his brothers he took 5 men and presented them to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to his brothers, what is your occupation? And they said to Pharaoh, your servants are shepherds, as our fathers were.
No, but it does say that right at the beginning of this Bible. Tell them you're shepherds.
Well,
Not that you're not.
so again, that might be a loss in the translation then, what Joseph is actually trying to say here. Joseph is telling them, don't tell them they're shepherds, and what do his brothers immediately do?
You tell them they're shepherds.
He tells them they're shepherds.
So right away, the king is going to say, put them in Goshen, get as far away as possible.
Well, here's the thing. He doesn't say that. Maybe we see the hand of God here for a second, because what is Pharaoh's response?
Have them take care of his livestock as well, right?
Verse 4, they said to Pharaoh, we have come to sojourn in the land, for there is no pasture for your servants' flocks, for the famine is severe in the land of Canaan. Now please let your servants dwell in the land of Goshen. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you. Settle your father and your brothers in the best of the land. Let them settle in the land of Goshen. And if you know any able men among you, put them in charge of my livestock. So Pharaoh does not drive them out of his land, but he still welcomes them in. Could God maybe be opening the heart of Pharaoh? We see in Exodus and Genesis, God can open the heart of Pharaoh and he can close it. He hardens the heart of Pharaoh during the Exodus. Maybe this is God saving the brothers from that slip up, that mistake, saying they are shepherds when really Joseph wanted to say, hey, keeper of all livestock, so they don't get offended at you. Well, Pharaoh's not offended. He still wants them. God is at work here. Questions on that? Okay. For the rest of this chapter, what happens next is Jacob meets Pharaoh, and Jacob blesses Pharaoh. Pharaoh gets to know Jacob a little bit. Then in verse 13, we hear more about how the famine continues, but Joseph is blessed by God. He makes the Egyptians very, very wealthy. As Bill, you said, Pharaoh made Joseph happy, and Joseph made Pharaoh very happy, continuing to care for him through the 5 years of famine. Go.
When you first read about the famine, Joseph tells Pharaoh. Pharaoh says, really, let's store up the food so
Yes.
we don't have a famine and people can eat.
Yes.
It's almost like, hey, put the food there so the people can have it. But now you're selling it to the people till they have no money
Yes.
and taking their land a little further on.
Yes.
You're not doing this out of gratitude for your people. You're taking it in for you.
So the question is, did the Egyptians sell to their own people, or did they sell to foreigners exclusively? Right.
But their own people, the Pharaoh wound up having his own people's land then.
Sure. Okay. So certainly there was some wealth gained by Pharaoh during this time.
He gained all the land.
Yes. So you're right. He did sell to Pharaoh's people too. Yes. Yeah, that's right. It was a little capitalistic society there. It's supply and demand. Demand was super high. Yes. So if we kept reading this chapter, you're absolutely right. We hear more about verse 20. So Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for all the Egyptians sold their fields because the famine was severe on them. You're correct, right? So I'm sorry. You're right. The Egyptians were sold to the food was sold to Egyptians as well. It was not given away. Okay, we're going to keep going because we've got 15 minutes left, and I really want to end with Exodus. Okay, so Joseph continues to make Egypt rich and rich. Verse 28 of 47, we hear about Jacob. Jacob lives in the land of Egypt how many years? 17. So Jacob ends up living 147 years and enjoys some of that time with Joseph. Then verse 29. And when the time drew near that Israel must die, he called his son Joseph and said to him, if now I have found favor in your sight, put your hand under my thigh and promise to deal kindly and truly with me. Do not bury me in Egypt, but let me lie with my fathers. Carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burying place. He answered, I will do as you have said. And he said, swear to me. And he swore to him. Then Israel bowed himself upon the head of his bed. Why did Jacob want to be buried with his fathers? Why did he not want to be in Egyptian land? He wants to be in the promised land. He wants God to keep his promise. This is not the end destination, Jacob is saying. Then right before Jacob dies in chapter 48, we're going to skip chapter 48. What happens here is Jacob basically adopts Ephraim and Manasseh. Who are they? Sons of Joseph. Joseph's sons into his own family, and he gives them a blessing like he does his own family members. Why is this significant? Well, it foreshadows. If you look at the back of your handout, you'll see a map. What is this map of? I'll give you a spill. It is the 12 tribes of Israel. And what names do you see here? Specifically the ones we just mentioned. Manasseh and Ephraim. Oh wait, Joseph is not on this map. Where's the tribe of Joseph? That is the tribe of Joseph. They're two sons, right? It's the line of Joseph through Jacob. We see Joseph represented. One other name is missing here. Do we know what that is? Levi. Why is Levi missing?
They're not landowners.
Okay, they're not landowners. They live with each of the tribes. What was going to happen to the Levites? What was God going to make them? He's going to make them a priesthood. And we'll talk about that in the coming weeks. But you see the 12 tribes of Israel all represented here. That includes the Levites throughout with no land. But you see Ephraim and Manasseh represented as the line of Joseph. That blessing, that adoption by Jacob into his family foreshadows their representation. And by the way, how big are the tribes of Manasseh and Ephraim? Are they small? They're very large. Very big. In fact, they're bigger than Reuben and Simeon.
It's like 1/3 of all the tribes.
Yeah, Reuben and Simeon were the first two born, and yet Manasseh and Ephraim are just as big. It goes to show that Joseph still loved Rachel's line. He did for sure. Questions on that? Please read chapter 48 on your own time. Also, chapter 49 on your own time. We're going to very quickly go through this. He blesses Ephraim and Manasseh, but he also blesses his sons. And there's a lot of cool stuff in here. Specifically, I'm going to highlight when he gathers for the brothers. Verse 3, he blesses Reuben. Well, not really a blessing. He says to Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, and the first fruits of my strength. Preeminent in dignity and preeminent in power. Unstable as water, you shall not have preeminence, because you went up to your father's bed. Then you defiled it. He went up to my couch. Why is Jacob saying that? What did Reuben do? He slept with his concubine. So we see that coming out again as a anti-blessing, I guess. You went after me, Reuben, and so you will have no blessing, no positive future. And we'll skip ahead. Let's do an important character we heard about today, Judah. What's Judah's blessing? Go to verse 8. Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's cub. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He stooped down. He crouched as a lion, as a lioness. Who dares rouse him? The scepter. What's a scepter? A royal staff. Royal stick, I guess, Bill, right? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribute comes to him, and to him shall be the obedience of the peoples. What does that say about Judah?
Be a ruler.
Be a ruler. Judah would rule over all his sons. King David came from who? What tribe?
Judah.
Tribe of Judah. Jesus would come from who? David. So from the tribe of Judah, who would come? Christ would come. Real quick, we're in the first book of the Bible. We're going to the last book of the Bible. Revelation, chapter 5. If you remember from a Revelation Bible study, it's okay if you forgot, this is the scene right after Jesus ascends into heaven. And what happens? We know what happens when the disciples are on the ground looking up. But what happens in heaven when Jesus rises to heaven, he ascends? What's happening on the other side of the clouds? We hear about it. The scroll and the Lamb. Chapter 5. Then I saw in the right hand of him who was seated on the throne, which is the Father, a scroll written within and on the back, sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a mighty angel proclaiming with a loud voice, "Who is worthy to open the scroll and break its seals?" And no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth was able to open the scroll or to look into it. And I began to weep loudly because no one was found worthy to open the scroll or to look into it. And one of the elders said to me, "Weep no more. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has conquered, so that he can open the scroll and its 7 seals." Is there anywhere in the Bible where Judah is described as a lion?
Right here.
Right in Genesis, Jacob says, "You are a lion's cub." So who would come as a lion from Judah, from the root of David? Who would be able to open the scroll and its contents? Jesus. Jesus is crowned king in this scene as a descendant of Judah. Kind of cool, right? We see a first and last book of the Bible connection right there. All right. Any questions on that? Let's go back to Genesis. We're almost done today. Finally, I want to read of Joseph's blessing. I think it's fitting. Verse 22 of chapter 49. Joseph is a fruitful bow by a spring. His branches run over the wall. The archers bitterly attacked him, shot at him, and harassed him severely, yet his bow remained unmoved. What is that referring to? Let's go back. We start at verse 22. We're at verse 23 now. The archers bitterly attacked him, shot at him, and harassed him severely, and his bow remained unmoved. What could that be referring to?
Steady hand, strong.
Why? What has Jacob seen in the life of his son that he would describe him as steady even in the face of adversity? What would be referring? What happened to Joseph? What happened from the beginning of his story?
Oh, bow. B-O-U-G-H.
Yes. Bow. What happened to Joseph?
A lot.
Well, at the beginning, what did his brothers do to him? Sold him into slavery. Would that you might describe as archers bitterly attacking him, shooting at him, harassing him severely? It's an analogy here, right? His own brothers betrayed him. He was thrown into Egypt. He was unfairly accused of a crime he did not commit in Egypt, and yet did he still stand firm? Did his faith in God waver?
His bow remained steady.
His bow remained steady.
By the power of the mighty God of Jacob.
That's right. His hands were made agile by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. For there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. By the God of your father who will help you, by the Almighty who will bless you with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that crouches beneath, blessings of the breast and of the womb. The blessings of your father are mighty beyond the blessings of my parents, up to the bounties of the everlasting hills. May they be on the head of Joseph, and on the brow of him who is set apart of his brothers. How was Joseph set apart? By God. For what?
Salvation to save all the people.
Okay. God set Joseph apart to save his people. And Jacob sees and recognizes that. The same conclusion that Joseph came to, which was what? Brothers, it's not, exactly. Brothers, it's not you who put me here in Egypt. It was God at work. God can even work through the darts and the arrows of evil. The darts of the evil one, even of the devil. When he attacks us, we know that God can work through us even through the evil temptations of our lives.
Well, the brothers meant it for evil, but God meant it
For good, right? Where the brothers meant for evil, God meant for good. Awesome. Questions on the blessings. Again, he blesses each of his sons. And we see, again, all this foreshadowing this map, which would be the 12 tribes of Israel represented. Then, at the end of the book, just going to sum this up, Jacob dies, and Joseph asks Pharaoh to bury him where? Back in the promised land. And Pharaoh says yes. And so Joseph goes with his brothers to where Isaac and Abraham are buried, his fathers. We covered Abraham and Isaac, and buries them there. But of course, where are all of Joseph's family members and Judah's family members? They're not in the promised land. Where are they? They're still in Egypt. Might be a problem, right, Gil? Because again, are the Egyptians and the Israelites just buddy-buddy now? No, they're still separated from each other because, as you saw, Bill, the Israelites are detestable to the Egyptians because of their sacrifices of lamb. And we'll see if, maybe fast forward a little bit, the Passover might be that absolute proclamation of victory of the Israelites over the Egyptians, right? We can sacrifice sheep in your own land because our God is true and yours are not. All right. Verse 15 of chapter 50. We'll read the rest. We're almost done. When Joseph's brothers saw their father was dead, they said, "It may be that Joseph will hate us and pay us back for all the evil that we did to him." So they sent a message to Joseph saying, "Your father gave this command before he died. Say to Joseph, please forgive the transgression of your brothers and their sin because they did evil to you. And now, please forgive the transgression of the servants of the God of your father." Joseph wept when they spoke to him. His brothers also came and fell down before him, fulfilling that dream, and said, "Behold, we are your servants." But Joseph said to them, "Do not fear, for am I in the place of God? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. Do not fear, I will provide for you and your little ones." Thus he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. What does Moses say to the Israelites this story about forgiveness? Because remember, who is this originally written to? Who are the first people that are reading this book?
The Israelites.
The Israelites. Where are they?
They're in the promised land.
in the wilderness and then into the promised land, right? They are going into the promised land by the time the Pentateuch is done, because Moses dies right before they're in the promised land. So what does Moses say to the Israelites about forgiveness? Should we hold grudges? You would think Joseph would be entitled to hold a grudge against his brothers, but no, we are to forgive those who sin against us, forgive those who repent. A message that will Jesus also echo in the New Testament? Absolutely. And finally, verse 22. So Joseph remained in Egypt, he and his father's house. Joseph lived 110 years. Long gone are the 900 years of life, 800 years of life, 700 years of life. Now we're down to what it is like now. And Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the third generation. The children also of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were counted as Joseph's own. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will visit you and bring you up out of this land to the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here. So Joseph died, being 110 years old. They embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. And real quick, just to foreshadow what we're going to talk about next week. First chapter of Exodus, the next page, verse 6. Then Joseph died, and all his brothers, and all that generation. But the people of Israel were fruitful and increased greatly. They multiplied and grew exceedingly strong, so the land was filled with them. Now there arose a new king over Egypt, who did not know Joseph. All right, so how does Genesis end? Where are the Israelites? They are in Egypt. And they are growing stronger and stronger, and things are great. But maybe the things are not so great by the end of Joseph's life, because when Joseph's about to die, what does he ask of his family? What did Jacob ask of Joseph? Go home and bury me right away. What if Joseph asked of his family? Not take me home right away, but when you do, take my bones out of here. Maybe at this point already, the Israelites aren't free to go home anymore. Maybe the tide is changing, because after all, we spoke about this, tension was there from the beginning, because the Egyptians saw the Israelites from the beginning as detestable. The Pharaoh liked who? Joseph, who's not here anymore. Joseph is, Pharaoh's gone and Joseph's gone.
All bets are off now.
All bets are off. A new regime. All bets are off.
The Israelites became a threat.
But the Israelites continue to grow and grow and grow, and that's where Exodus begins. Right? It's really cool. Genesis goes into Exodus. Like, Exodus is basically Genesis part 2 as we continue into the story of the narrative, how the Israelites got to Israel, how the Israelites got the promised land, how the Israelites continue to grow to the point where the kings would come around, King David, King Solomon, and from that monarchy, how they would end up in Babylon. We talked about Daniel, how they would be cast into Babylon and then come back to Israel, rebuild the temple, and then from there, who would be born? Jesus would be born. The Old Testament is about Jesus. How did we get there? How was God at work through sinners? Well, we see in Joseph's story, he's even at work and through his brothers selling him to slavery. Because through Joseph, the people of Israel would go strong, and they would come out of Egypt even stronger, as we'll see as we read the book of Exodus together. Final questions or comments before we wrap up tonight. We did it. We got through Genesis in 11 weeks. 50 chapters. We averaged, what, 4.8 4.7 and 4.8 chapters a week. I'm pretty impressed with that. Exodus will also be, we'll take our time through Exodus because there's a lot of narrative through Exodus. And then when we get to Leviticus, we might spend 2 or 3 weeks on Leviticus, then a couple weeks on Numbers, and then Deuteronomy we'll also spend some time on as well. And we're going to try to get through these 5 books by Christmas. And then after Christmas, we can jump into another gospel. Again, I think we're going to do the Gospel of John together when the new year comes. But we got to keep moving to get to that point. So, all right, let's pray, shall we? Dear God, Father in heaven, thank you for giving us a story of Joseph, a story about forgiveness, a story about your power, a story that reassures us that even when our lives go upside down, even when evil surrounds us, even when we can make a complete mess of our lives, you can still do good through us. You can still make good through us. Because nothing is beyond redeeming for you. Nothing and no one is beyond your love. Remind us of that as we care for those around us who are broken, who need our love. Remind us to forgive as Joseph forgave his brothers. Remind us that we are not entitled to any grudges because through your Son you did the ultimate act of forgiveness. Giving up your Son to die on a cross, to pay the price for every single one of our sins, to rise from the dead, to conquer death, and to give us the free gift. For those who believe, we shall have eternal life in His name. We did not deserve it, but you gave it to us freely. Just like Joseph gave abundant gifts to his brothers freely. I pray that you would remind us of this gospel truth each and every day, for the good days and the bad, that we may know that we are never alone, but you are with us, you love us, and you walk with us every step of our lives. Protect us this night. Keep us safe this week. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week. We start